I want to start today with a mental image, an image that I think just completely upends how we usually think about, power dynamics.
Oh, I'm with you.
Picture the agency around 75 BC. You've got this merchant vessel sailing near an island called Pharmacusa. On board is a 25-year-old Roman nobleman. He's on his way to Rhodes to study oratory, which is basically, he's going to grad school.
Right. A classic step for an ambitious young Roman.
But he never makes it.
Because the Cilician pirates intercept him. And we really need to be clear about who these pirates were.
Oh, absolutely.
This wasn't, a few guys on a raft with an eye patch.
Yeah.
These pirates were a scourge. They were an organized naval power. They controlled huge swaths of the Mediterranean. They had fortified bases. Their intelligence network was incredible.
Yeah.
And their entire business model was kidnapping high-value targets.
Exactly. So they swarm the ship, they find this young nobleman, drag him off, and take him to their island hideout. They look at his clothes, his bearing, and they figure, okay, this kid is worth something.
A standard calculation for them.
So they demand a ransom of 20 talents of silver. Now, for context, you need to understand what a talent is. It's roughly the weight of a person in silver. 20 talents is a massive, massive fortune. It's enough to pay a small army for a month.
It's life-changing money. And in this situation, you are completely at their mercy. These are lawless men who would kill a hostage for sport if the money was late. Most people would be weeping, begging, just hoping their family doesn't let them rot.
But not this guy. When they tell him the price is 20 talents, he bursts out laughing.
He laughs at them.
He looks these hardened killers right in the eye and tells them they are ignorant savages because they clearly have no idea who they've captured. He says 20 talents is insulting. He actually orders them to raise the ransom
To 50 talents.
They're 50 talents,
Yeah.
which is it's astronomical. That's about 12,000 gold pieces. He is essentially pricing himself as a head of state before he's even held a major office. The audacity is just off the charts.
I mean, what must the pirates have been thinking?
They must have thought he was insane. But he doesn't stop there. He sends his entourage away to go and collect this enormous sum of cash, leaving him with just a physician and 2 servants. So for 38 days, he is stuck on this island with them.
And this is where the story gets really strange.
It does, because he doesn't act like a prisoner. He acts like their commander. He joins their athletic games, and then he gets annoyed if he loses. He writes poetry and speeches, and he forces the pirates to sit there and listen to him recite them.
And if they didn't applaud enthusiastically enough,
He called them illiterate barbarians to their faces. He would tell them to be quiet when he wanted to take a nap. And the pirates, for their part, they just thought this was hilarious. They saw him as this eccentric, harmless, rich kid with a massive ego. They kind of tolerated him.
they mistook that supreme arrogance for eccentricity. And that right there is a fatal error when you're dealing with him.
And the most chilling part is the joke he kept telling them. He would say with a smile, once my money gets here and I'm free, I'm going to come back with the fleet and I'm going to crucify every single one of you.
And they would just laugh and slap him on the back.
Yeah. Because in their world, a captured student doesn't threaten a pirate fleet. The idea is absurd.
Until the money arrives.
The 50 talents are paid. They release him on the coast of Miletus. And this is the moment. This is the moment that defines the man we're talking about today. He doesn't go home. He doesn't go find a therapist. He goes straight to the docks. He uses his family name and his sheer force of personality to commandeer a small fleet of ships and a militia.
With no legal authority to do so.
None. And he sails right back to that island that same night.
He catches them completely off guard. They're likely still celebrating, counting their money.
He captures almost all of them. He takes his 50 talents back. He takes all their other loot, too. He hauls them to the prison at Pergamon. And here is where the legal ruthlessness kicks in. The local governor, a guy named Julius, starts hemming and hawing about executing them. He's thinking, hey, these are valuable pirates. Maybe we can sell them as slaves. Maybe I can get a cut of the loot.
Which is just typical Roman bureaucratic corruption.
Right. But our young nobleman isn't having any of it. He ignores the governor, marches to the prison, and he orders the pirates to be crucified, just as he promised. But, and this is a key detail, in a moment of what he probably considered mercy, he ordered their throats slit first so they wouldn't suffer on the cross for days.
That specific blend of absolute adherence to his word, terrifying competence, and a twisted, pragmatic form of mercy. That is Gaius Julius Caesar in a nutshell.
That is the man we are dissecting today. Welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at the entirety of the life of Julius Caesar. And I don't mean the guy from the Shakespeare play, and I definitely don't mean the guy on the pizza box. We are looking at the political operator, the military engineer, and the man who effectively single-handedly pivoted the Western world from a republic to an empire.
And it is a pivot. That's the right word. It's so important for you to frame this correctly. We aren't just talking about a general winning a few battles. We are talking about the collapse of a 500-year-old political system and the birth of a new one that would last for another 1,500 years. And Caesar. Caesar is the fulcrum.
So to understand him, we have to look at the sources. And we've got a great stack today.
We do. We have to look at the ancient accounts. Suetonius for the character, all the juicy details, Plutarch for the morality plays, and of course Caesar's own commentaries for the military narrative. But, and this is the key, we have to read them critically.
Because Caesar was the original master of spin.
Exactly. He wrote his own history while he was making it. It's brilliant propaganda. So our job today is to verify the facts where we can, strip away the mythology he built around himself, and find the actual human being underneath it all.
So let's go back to the beginning, the origins of a patrician populist. Because that phrase itself, patrician populist, it sounds like an oxymoron. You're either one or the other.
Usually, yes. But Caesar was a walking contradiction from birth. He was born around July 12th or 13th, 100 BC. His family, the gens Julia, was technically as highborn as you could possibly get in Rome.
The bluest of blue bloods?
Right. They claimed direct descent from Elis, who was the son of Aeneas, who in turn was the son of the goddess Venus. So, Caesar claimed to be the great-grandson of a goddess.
That's a decent opening line at a party. My great-grandmother, oh, she was Venus.
It definitely gave him a sense of destiny, no question. But here's the paradox. Socially and economically, the Julias were, well, they were irrelevant. They were an ancient, dusty family that hadn't held the consulship, the top job in Rome, in generations. They had the name, but they had no money and no real political clout.
And where they lived is key here.
Yes. They lived in a modest house in the Suburra.
And the Suburra isn't the Palatine Hill where the billionaires live. The Suburra is the slums. It's crowded, it's loud, it's dangerous. It smells like cabbage and sewage. Caesar grows up aristocratic by blood, but really street level by geography.
And that duality absolutely shaped his politics. Rome was violently divided at this time. On one side, you had the optimates, the best men. These were the conservatives, the Senate hardliners, who believed that a small circle of elite families should run everything.
The establishment.
The establishment. On the other side, you had the populares, the people's men. These were reformers, sometimes genuine, sometimes cynical, who wanted things like land redistribution and more power for the plebeian assemblies. They used the power of the mob as their political tool.
And Caesar's family, despite their blue blood, they picked the populares.
They didn't just pick it, they married into its heart. Caesar's aunt, Julia, married Gaius Marius. And we cannot overstate who Marius was. He was a new man, someone with no famous ancestors, who rose to become Rome's greatest general. He held the consulship an unprecedented 7 times. He radically reformed the army into a professional force loyal to its general, not the state.
A very important detail for later.
Crucial. And he was the undisputed hero of the common people.
So Caesar grows up with the most famous populist in Roman history as his uncle. But that connection, that very powerful connection, almost gets him killed before he can even really start his career. We have to talk about the Civil War.
The Sulla crisis is the first time the Republic truly breaks. Sulla was the champion of the optimates. He and Marius fought a brutal, horrific civil war for control of Rome. Marius dies, and Sulla marches on the city, takes over, and declares himself dictator. And then he starts the proscriptions.
The proscriptions are the stuff of nightmares. Sulla posted lists of names in the Roman Forum. If your name was on that list, you were stripped of your citizenship. Anyone could kill you on the spot and claim a reward. Your property was seized by the state. Your sons and grandsons were banned from holding public office forever.
It was political terror on an industrial scale. And at the very top of that list were the allies and relatives of Marius. Caesar was the nephew of Marius and the son-in-law of Cinna, Marius' successor. He was 18 years old, and he was a walking target.
Sulla has him hauled in and gives him an ultimatum, a test. He says, divorce your wife, Cornelia, and you might live.
And this was a clear loyalty test. Sulla wanted to sever Caesar's connection to the popular faction, to his past. Pompey, who we'll meet in detail later, was in a similar situation. Sulla told him to divorce his wife, and Pompey did it. Immediately.
But Caesar
refused. This teenager looked the dictator of Rome in the eye, a man with the blood of thousands on his hands, and he said no. It was an act of almost suicidal bravery.
Sulla was apparently stunned. He stripped Caesar of his priesthood, the high priest of Jupiter. He confiscated his wife's dowry. He confiscated his inheritance. But for some reason, he didn't kill him on the spot.
He had to flee.
He had to flee Rome in the middle of the night. There's this vivid detail in the sources about him hiding in the Sabine Hills. He's sick with a fever, moving from farmhouse to farmhouse every single night to avoid Sulla's bounty hunters. At one point, he's caught by a patrol, and he has to bribe the commander with pretty much every last coin he has to let him go.
He was living like a fugitive animal. Eventually, his mother's family, who had some connections to Sulla's side, petitioned for a pardon. They nagged Sulla relentlessly until he finally, grudgingly gave in. But Sulla is reported to have said something absolutely prophetic. He told his supporters, "I grant you this boy's life, but keep a close watch on him. In this loose-skirt boy, there are many Mariuses."
Loose skirt boy. I
Right.
love that insult. Can we unpack the fashion statement there for a second?
It's a great detail. Roman men of action usually wore their tunics belted very tightly and pulled up to the knee for practicality. Caesar, on the other hand, wore his loose with long fringed sleeves and the belt barely cinched around his hips.
So it's a fashion statement.
It's a fashion statement, but in Roman cultural coding, that signaled a certain effeminacy or a lack of discipline. It was the ancient equivalent of walking around with your pants sagging. Sulla was saying, "Don't let the sloppy clothes and the party boy attitude fool you. This kid is dangerous."
So Caesar survives, but he's broke. His inheritance is gone. His wife's dowry is gone. He does what many ambitious young Romans did. He joins the army. He heads to Asia Minor. And this is where he starts building his legend. He wins the civic crown.
The Corona Civica. This was the second highest military decoration in the entire Roman Republic. You only get it for saving the life of a fellow citizen in battle and holding the ground you saved him on. It wasn't just a medal. It came with serious legal privileges.
Like what?
Well, for one, when a holder of the civic crown entered the Senate, all the senators, no matter how old or distinguished, had to stand up out of respect. Imagine being 20 years old and having 60-year-old statesmen, former consuls, stand up for you.
It's an instant status symbol.
It is. So he spends a few years fighting, then goes off to study oratory and deals with the whole pirate situation, and then Sulla dies. Caesar can finally return to Rome to start the climb. The cursus honorum.
The ladder of offices.
Right. Quaestor, aedile, praetor, consul. You have to work your way up. Caesar hits the rungs, but his main obstacle always is money. He is borrowing astronomical sums to fund his career.
He has champagne taste on a beer budget.
Not even. He has no budget. When he was elected aedile, that's the magistrate in charge of public buildings and festivals, he threw games that were legendary. He put 320 pairs of gladiators in the arena, all at his own expense. He equipped them with custom-made silver armor. The city talked about it for years.
So he was buying the love of the people.
He was buying it with credit cards he absolutely could not pay off. He became the most indebted man in Rome. There's a famous story that before he left for a governorship in Spain, his creditors physically tried to stop him from leaving the city.
The bailiffs showed up?
The bailiffs showed up. Marcus Licinius Crassus, the richest man in Rome, had to step in and personally co-sign a loan for 830 talents just to get the creditors off Caesar's back so he could go to his job.
There's a psychological aspect to this debt, isn't there? Caesar had to keep rising. If he stopped, if he lost an election, he'd lose his legal immunity from prosecution. His creditors would descend, he'd go bankrupt, and his life would be over.
He was betting double or nothing on his own success every single year. There was no safety net.
Which explains the crying incident.
The Alexander statue, yes. While he's in Spain serving as governor, he sees a statue of Alexander the Great. And he falls to his knees and weeps. His staff rushes over and asks him what's wrong.
And what does he say?
He says, "At my age, Alexander had conquered the world. I have done nothing." He was 32 years old. He was terrified of being mediocre.
That desperation leads us to 60 BC. This is the pivotal moment in his early career. Caesar wants the consulship. It's the top job. But the Optimates in the Senate, led by men like Cato the Younger, are blocking him at every turn. They hate him. They see him as a chaotic, debt-ridden populist who will destroy their traditions.
So Caesar realizes he can't win alone. He can't fight the entire establishment by himself. He needs allies.
And he engineers the first triumvirate.
And we should be really clear, this is often taught as some formal government body, but it wasn't. It was a conspiracy. It was a secret, illegal, backroom deal between three of the most powerful men in Rome to hijack the Republic for their own benefit.
Let's break down the roster of this three-headed monster, as their enemies called it.
First, you have Caesar himself. He's the political face. He has the popular support, the energy, the ambition. He brings the votes.
Then you have Cnaeus Pompeius, Magnus Pompey the Great.
Pompey is the military heavyweight. He's Rome's most celebrated general at this point. He's conquered the East, he suppressed the pirates, the very ones who captured Caesar, and he doubled Rome's annual tax revenue. But the Senate is snubbing him. They're jealous. They refuse to ratify the treaties he made in the East or give promised land to his veterans. So he's powerful, but he's also sulking and frustrated.
And the third head of this monster, Marcus Licinius Crassus.
Crassus is the money. He's the oligarch. He made his fortune in the prescriptions, buying up the property of the condemned. He owned these private fire brigades.
I love this story.
It's pure, ruthless capitalism. He would rush to a burning building in Rome and then offer to buy it for pennies on the dollar from the panicked owner. If the owner agreed, his slaves would put out the fire. If the owner refused, he just let it burn to the ground.
Unbelievable.
So he's got all the money in the world, and he and Pompey hate each other. They are bitter rivals.
So Caesar, the brilliant political operator, gets these two rivals into a room and says, essentially, you both want things the Senate won't give you. I want the consulship. If we work together, if we pool our resources, Pompey's soldiers, Crassus's money, my popularity, then nothing happens in Rome without our permission.
And to bind the deal, to make it personal, Caesar gives his only daughter, Julia, to Pompey in marriage. And by all accounts, despite the significant age gap, they really fell in love. It became the emotional anchor of the entire alliance.
So with the triumvirate's power behind him, Caesar bullies his way into the consulship of 59 BC. And bullies is absolutely the right word.
It was a year of political violence and constitutional vandalism. Caesar proposed a land bill to give public land to the urban poor and to Pompey's veterans. The Senate, led by Cato, tried to filibuster it. Cato just talked and talked for hours to run up the clock.
Standard political procedure, even back then.
Yes, but Caesar wasn't playing by the rules. He just had Cato arrested and dragged out of the Senate. Then, when his co-consul, a conservative named Bibulus, tried to declare bad omens to stop the vote.
This is the famous basket of poop incident, isn't it?
It is. Caesar's political thugs, who were almost certainly Pompey's veterans in civilian clothes, attacked Bibulus in the forum. They dumped a basket of manure over his head and broke his lictors' rods, his symbols of office. Bibulus was so humiliated and terrified that he fled to his house and didn't come out for the rest of the year.
So he just stayed home.
He stayed home and issued edicts from his window claiming he was watching the sky for omens, which technically under religious law meant no public business could be done.
But Caesar did it anyway.
He ignored the Constitution completely. He passed his laws by taking them directly to the people's assemblies, bypassing the Senate entirely. The Romans, with their dark humor, joked that the consuls for the year weren't Bibulus and Caesar, but Julius and Caesar.
It was a one-man show, and Caesar knew that the moment his one-year term was up, he would be prosecuted, he'd be tried for all of these illegal acts. He needed a get-out-of-jail-free card.
He needed a province with an army. A governorship gave you legal immunity from prosecution, and an army gave you, well, an army.
And through his triumvirate allies, he secured a 5-year governorship of Cisalpine Gaul, which is northern Italy, and Illyricum, the Balkan coast. Then, by a stroke of luck, the governor of Transalpine Gaul, southern France, died, and he got that added to the pot as well. This gave him legal immunity and, more importantly, a frontier. It gave him a place to start a war.
And this moves us into the Gallic Wars, 58 BC to 50 BC. This is where the debt-ridden politician from the slums transforms into a military genius of the first rank. But we have to ask the question, was this a justified war?
By our standards today, absolutely not. It was a naked war of aggression for personal gain. Caesar needed gold to pay off his colossal debts, and he needed military glory to eclipse Pompey, who was still seen as the greater general.
So he found a pretext. The Helvetii, a Gallic tribe, were migrating. They wanted to cross through Roman territory. Caesar said no, used their movement as an excuse, and launched a full-scale invasion and conquest of all of Gaul.
I want to focus on the engineering. Because when people think of Roman armies, they think of swords and shields and discipline. But Caesar's army was basically a construction crew that also happened to kill people.
That is a perfect description. The Roman legionnaire was an engineer first and a soldier second. He carried a shovel and a pickaxe, the dolabra, as well as his sword, the gladius. Their ability to alter the landscape, to build fortifications, roads, bridges, that was their superpower. And the Rhine Bridge in 55 BC is the ultimate example.
Okay, set the scene for us.
The Germanic tribes keep raiding across the Rhine River into Gaul. Then they retreat back to the east side, basically sticking their tongues out at Caesar, thinking the river protects them. And it's a formidable barrier. It's wide, it's deep, it's incredibly fast-moving.
No one had ever successfully bridged it.
No one. Caesar decides he needs to send a psychological message. He doesn't want to just cross by boat. He wants to walk his legions across. He wants to show the Germans that not even their geography can protect them. So he orders a bridge built.
And the specs of this thing, even today, are just wild.
It's a timber trestle bridge. They use massive pile drivers, heavy weights on pulleys mounted on rafts, to hammer enormous sharpened oak trunks into the riverbed. But here's the genius part. They didn't drive them in straight. They drove the upstream piles in at an angle against the current, and the downstream piles at an angle with the current. Then they connected them with a massive horizontal beam.
So the pressure of the water actually made it stronger.
Exactly. The harder the river's current pushed against the bridge, the tighter the joints locked together. It used the river's own force to stabilize itself. It was brilliant.
And how long did this take? A project like this today would take years.
10 days. From cutting the first piece of timber to marching the first legionary across. 10 days.
Imagine you're a German tribesman on the other side of the river. You think this river is an impassable god. And in a week and a half, these Romans just, they pave it.
You'd be terrified. You would think they were sorcerers. And that was the whole point. Caesar marched his army across, burned some villages, didn't really fight a major battle, stayed for 18 days just to make a point, and then he walked back and had the bridge dismantled.
The message was crystal clear.
Nature does not protect you from Rome. We can go anywhere, anytime we want. It was psychological warfare at its absolute peak.
He also invaded Britain twice.
Right, in 55 and 54 BC, the first Roman incursions. Militarily, they weren't huge successes. He didn't establish a permanent conquest. But as a PR move back in Rome, it was a sensation. He was literally expanding the known map. He was taking Roman eagles to a mystical island at the edge of the world. The propaganda value was immense.
But the Gauls weren't just going to roll over. The war drags on for years. It's brutal and bloody. And eventually, the disparate Gallic tribes realize that their disunity is killing them. They need to work together.
And they find a leader, a young, brilliant chieftain from the Arverni tribe named Vercingetorix.
Vercingetorix is the anti-Caesar. He's just as brilliant, just as charismatic, and he understands Roman tactics. He knows he can't win a pitched battle against the legions in the open. So he adopts a scorched earth policy. He convinces his own people to burn their crops and villages, to deny Caesar's army food and supplies. He forces Caesar to chase him across Gaul.
Which leads to the climax of the entire war, the Siege of Alesia in 52 BC. If you only study one battle from ancient history, you should study Alesia. It is tactically and logistically mind-bending.
So Vercingetorix retreats to a massive, well-defended hilltop fortress called Alesia with 80,000 men. He thinks he's safe, he can wait Caesar out. Caesar arrives with about 60,000 men. He can't storm the hill, it's too steep, too well-defended. So he decides to starve them out. He orders his men to build a wall around the entire mountain.
This is the circumvallation. It's an 11-mile-long wall. But it's not just a wall, it is a death zone.
Describe the layers, because it just shows the cruel, systematic genius of Roman engineering.
Okay, so in front of the wall itself, they dug a series of ditches. One was 20 feet wide and filled with water by diverting nearby rivers. Then they had fields of what they called sippy-sharpened tree trunks buried in trenches, so only the deadly spikes stuck up. Then they had lilies, cone-shaped pits with a sharpened fire-hardened stick at the bottom, all covered by brush. If you stepped on it, it would pierce your foot and impale your entire leg.
Horrifying.
And then, scattered in the grass in front of all that, were stimuli, small iron hooks or caltrops designed to rip your flesh if you tried to run across. It was essentially an ancient minefield made of wood and iron.
11-mile-long meat grinder. But just as Caesar finishes this wall to keep Vercingetorix and his 80,000 men in, he gets bad news.
Very bad news. Vercingetorix had managed to get messengers out before the circle was closed. And now, a massive Gallic relief army is on its way. The courses say it was 250,000 warriors, 250,000 men coming to crush Caesar.
So Caesar is trapped. He has 80,000 angry Gauls inside the donut hole, and 250,000 more coming to crush the donut from the outside.
Standard military doctrine says you retreat, you get out of there. You don't allow yourself to be sandwiched. But Caesar does the unthinkable. He orders a second wall to be built. The contravallation. This one faces outward. It's 14 miles long, with the same ditches and traps. He creates a fortified corridor. The Romans are now the meat in the sandwich, but a sandwich made of fortified walls.
The battle that follows is just desperate, brutal fighting. The Gauls attack from both sides at the same time. There's a moment where the outer wall is breached. The Romans are wavering. They're about to break.
And this is where Caesar the general earns his pay. He puts on his distinctive scarlet cloak so his men can identify him instantly on the chaotic battlefield, and he rides personally into the breach. He jumps off his horse and joins the hand-to-hand combat.
His men see this.
They see their commander fighting in the mud beside them, and it galvanizes them. They rally, they push the Gauls back. The massive relief army, which was disorganized and starving, eventually broke and fled.
And Vercingetorix, inside Alesia, sees it happen.
He knows it's over. The next day, in a famous dramatic gesture, he puts on his finest armor, rides out of the gates alone, circles Caesar's command post, and then throws his weapons down at Caesar's feet. He just sits down and waits to be captured and taken in chains.
The Gallic Wars were essentially over, but we have to talk about the cost. The numbers are staggering.
Plutarch claims that over the 8 years of the war, 1 million Gauls were killed and another million were enslaved. Now, even if those numbers are exaggerated for effect, the scale of the destruction was genocidal. Caesar wiped out entire cultures to pay off his debts and advance his career. We could admire the engineering and the tactics, but we have to acknowledge the horror.
And we only know about it because Caesar himself wrote the book.
The Commentarii de Bello Gallico. The Commentaries on the Gallic War. This is his propaganda masterpiece. It's written in this clean, direct, third-person style. Caesar did this, Caesar decided that, to make it sound like an objective report.
But it's not.
It's not. It's designed to be read back in Rome to keep his name on everyone's lips while he's away for years. He consistently exaggerates the number of enemies he faced and minimizes his own Roman losses. It's a political document disguised as a military history.
So Caesar conquers Gaul. He's now fantastically wealthy from the plunder. He's more famous than ever. And his soldiers, his legions, are fiercely loyal to him personally, not to the state of Rome. But back in Rome, the political ground has shifted dangerously beneath his feet.
All right, the triumvirate collapsed. It fell apart. First, Crassus. Remember the money man. He wanted his own military glory to match Pompey and Caesar. He foolishly invaded Parthia, modern Iran, in 53 BC. It was an absolute disaster.
The Battle of Carrhae.
One of Rome's worst defeats. Crassus was killed. And legend says the Parthians poured molten gold down his throat as a final mockery of his famous greed.
That's a rough way to go. So the buffer between Caesar and Pompey is gone, and then the personal bond breaks.
Julia, Caesar's daughter and Pompey's wife, died in childbirth in 54 BC. The personal link was severed. Caesar tried to offer Pompey a new wife, his great niece, but Pompey refused. He was drifting away.
And the Optimates in the Senate saw their chance.
They started whispering in Pompey's ear. They told him Caesar was a threat, that Caesar's ambition was endless, that he wanted to be king. Pompey, who was always jealous of Caesar's rising star, switched sides. He became the champion of the Senate against his old ally.
So the Senate, with Pompey's backing, passes a decree. They demand that Caesar disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen.
Which would be a death sentence. The moment he gave up his command, his legal immunity would vanish. His enemies would immediately prosecute him for his illegal acts during his consulship. He would be ruined, exiled, or worse.
He was cornered. He tried to negotiate. He offered to disband his army if Pompey did the same. The Senate flatly refused. They passed the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, the ultimate decree of the Senate, which essentially declared Caesar a public enemy and authorized Pompey to do whatever was necessary to defend the Republic.
It was fight or political death. January 10th, 49 BC, the Rubicon River.
The Rubicon was a small stream, but it marked the legal boundary between his province, Cisalpine Gaul, and Italy proper. A governor could not legally bring troops across that line. To do so was an act of civil war. It was treason.
He stands on the bank of the river with just one legion, the 13th, about 5,000 men, against the entire military and financial resources of the Roman Republic, led by its most famous general, Pompey.
Suetonius says he hesitated. He turned to his staff and said, "Even now we can turn back, but once we cross that little bridge, the whole issue is with the sword."
Then he saw a vision, or at least he claimed he did, and plunged his horse into the water, shouting, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast, there's no turning back.
He moves with that trademark speed. It's a blitzkrieg. He sweeps down the Italian coast. The resistance just crumbles because no one expected him to move in the middle of winter. Pompey and the Senate panic. They abandon Rome.
This was a huge strategic blunder, but they felt they couldn't defend the city against Caesar's veteran legions. They fled to Greece to raise a massive army from the eastern provinces.
So Caesar enters Rome without a fight. He leaves Mark Antony in charge, and then he makes this famously arrogant statement.
He says, "I am going to Spain to fight an army without a general, and then to the east to fight a general without an army."
And he does it. He clears out Pompey's veteran armies in Spain in a matter of months. Then he heads to Greece for the final showdown. It happens at Pharsalus in 48 BC.
Pharsalus is a masterclass in reading your opponent and exploiting their arrogance. Pompey had the numbers on his side. He had roughly 45,000 infantry to Caesar's 22,000. And crucially, Pompey had a massive cavalry advantage, maybe 7-1, which he massed on his left wing.
The plan was a classic hammer and anvil. Use the cavalry to smash Caesar's right flank and then roll up the entire infantry line.
It was a good plan. And Caesar saw it coming. He saw the cavalry massing on that wing. So he did something very risky. He thinned out his main infantry lines, making them dangerously weak, in order to pull out enough men for a secret weapon. A fourth line.
He hid 6 cohorts, about 3,000 of his best veterans, behind his own small cavalry force, obscured by the dust and the angle of the lines.
So Pompey's cavalry charged. Caesar's horsemen deliberately retreated, luring them in. Pompey's cavalry, thinking they had won, surged forward, becoming disordered and breaking formation.
And then, boom, the fourth line steps out from behind the curtain.
And here's the brutal tactical genius. Caesar gave them a specific order. He told them not to throw their heavy javelins, their pila, but to use them as thrusting spears. And he told them to aim for the faces.
Why the faces?
Pompey's cavalry was made up of young, vain Roman aristocrats. They were the pretty boys of the army. Caesar reportedly said something like, "They are more terrified of scars on their faces than of death." And it worked. The sight of these grim, hardened veterans stabbing at their eyes caused an absolute panic. The cavalry broke and fled the field.
And the fourth line was now free to smash into Pompey's exposed flank.
The whole army just collapsed. It was a total rout. Pompey himself fled the field in disguise. He heads to Egypt, thinking the young king there, Ptolemy III, owes him a favor and will give him shelter.
It was a tragic miscalculation. Ptolemy's advisors argued about what to do. If they helped Pompey, Caesar would be furious and destroy them. If they turned Pompey away, Pompey might come back later for revenge. One advisor, Theodotus, is quoted as saying, "Dead men don't bite."
So as Pompey steps off a small rowboat onto the Egyptian beach, with his wife watching in horror from the ship, he is stabbed in the back and beheaded.
Caesar arrives a few days later, in pursuit. He is presented with Pompey's severed head in a pickle jar, essentially, as a gift.
And he doesn't celebrate?
He weeps. He turns away in disgust. He later executed the men who killed Pompey. This was a Roman consul, his former son-in-law, his rival. It was a violation of Roman dignity. Caesar wanted to pardon Pompey, to show his famous clementia, his mercy. The Egyptians stole that political victory from him.
But he stays in Egypt. He gets drawn into their own civil war between the young King Ptolemy and his brilliant older sister Cleopatra.
And Cleopatra is a political genius in her own right. She knows she needs Caesar, so she has herself smuggled into the palace where he's staying, famously wrapped in a laundry sack, not a carpet, that's a later myth, to get a private audience with him.
And they form an alliance. It's both political and personal. She gives him the money he needs to pay his legions and a base of legitimacy in the East. He gives her the military might to defeat her brother and secure the throne of Egypt. And yes, they become lovers and have a son, Caesarion.
After a few months cruising the Nile with Cleopatra, he finally heads to Asia Minor to crush a rebel king named Pharnaces. This leads to the Battle of Zela. It was so fast, so completely one-sided, that Caesar sent the shortest and most arrogant military dispatch in history back to the Senate.
Veni, vidi, vici, I came, I saw, I conquered.
It was a subtle flex to the senators back in Rome. This is what I do. I am knocking down kings in an afternoon. Don't mess with me.
By 45 BC, after mopping up the last of the resistance in Africa and Spain, the civil war is over. Caesar returns to Rome as the undisputed, absolute master of the Roman world. He is named Dictator Perpetua, Dictator for life.
And this is where the final tragedy begins. The war was won, but the peace proved much harder to navigate. Caesar started ruling by decree. He acted like a king in everything but name. He wore high red boots that were associated with the ancient kings of Rome. He sat on a golden chair in the Senate house. He allowed his face to be put on coins, which was unprecedented for a living Roman.
But at the same time, he was an incredible reformer. We have to give him credit for the administrative overhaul he pushed through. The calendar, for instance.
This is probably his most lasting legacy that we still use every day.
It is. The old Roman calendar was a lunar one, and it was a chaotic mess. It was only 355 days long. To keep it in sync with the seasons, the high priest was supposed to insert an extra month every few years. But this system was massively corrupt. Politicians would use it to add months to keep their friends in office or skip them to hurt their enemies.
So by Caesar's time, the calendar was completely out of whack. January was happening in autumn. The harvest festivals were being held in the snow.
Caesar, with his orderly mind, couldn't stand it. He brought in Sisigines, an Alexandrian astronomer, and they switched Rome to a solar calendar. 365 days, with a leap year added every 4 years. To fix the alignment problem once and for all, the year 46 BC had to be extended to 445 days. It was called the Year of Confusion. But on January 1st, 45 BC, the new Julian calendar started, and we're still basically using it today.
He also tackled the huge problems of debt and the grain dole.
And he walked a very clever middle path. He didn't just cancel all debts, which the radicals wanted. He canceled all interest payments, but insisted the principal still be paid. He cut the number of people receiving free grain from the state from 320,000 down to 150,000, making the system sustainable. But at the same time, he founded huge new colonies overseas in places like Carthage and Corinth to give the poor land and a new start so they wouldn't need the dole. It was smart technocratic governance.
But his political reforms infuriated the old guard. He expanded the Senate from 600 to 900 members.
Which, from the perspective of the old aristocratic families, was an outrage. He packed the Senate with his loyal centurions, his business friends, and, most shockingly, even some Gauls from his newly conquered province.
Imagine the horror of a conservative Roman senator whose family's been in the Senate for 400 years, seeing a barbarian in a toga sitting in the Senate house.
It completely diluted their prestige, their dignitas, and that dignitas was everything to them. They felt he was mocking them, destroying their world. And so the conspiracy begins to form.
It wasn't just about liberty in the abstract, democratic sense. It was about the oligarchy losing its exclusive right to rule. The ringleaders were Cassius Longinus, who held a personal grudge against Caesar, and Marcus Junius Brutus.
And Brutus is the tragic figure in all of this. Caesar genuinely loved him. He had pardoned him after the Civil War, even though Brutus fought on Pompey's side. He promoted him to high office. There were even rumors that Brutus was Caesar's illegitimate son, though the math is a bit shaky on that.
But Brutus felt the immense weight of his family name. His ancestor, another Brutus, had expelled the last king of Rome 500 years earlier.
And his enemies used this. Graffiti started appearing on Brutus's tribunal at night. "Brutus, are you sleeping?" He's like, "You are not a true Brutus." They shamed him, they pressured him into joining the conspiracy as its public face of legitimacy.
The date is set, March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March. Caesar is planning to leave Rome on March 18th to launch a massive invasion of Parthia. The conspirators know that if they don't kill him now, he'll be gone for years, and he'll come back even more powerful and godlike.
And the signs were all there. A soothsayer had famously warned him, "Beware the Ides of March." His wife, Calpurnia, had a nightmare that she was holding his dead body in her arms and she begged him to stay home. And he almost did. He felt ill that morning. He sent a message to the Senate saying he wouldn't come.
But then Decimus Brutus, another conspirator whom Caesar trusted completely, came to the house and essentially mocked him. He said, "Are you, the great Caesar, going to dissolve the Senate because your wife had a bad dream?" And Caesar's pride, his greatest strength and his fatal flaw, couldn't take it. He put on his toga and went.
He dismisses his bodyguards at the door of the building. He wants to project invincibility to show he doesn't need them. He enters the theater of Pompeii. The main Senate house was under construction. And he sits on his golden chair. The 60 or so conspirators crowd around him, pretending to present a petition.
Tullius Cimber grabs his toga and pulls it down off his shoulders, restricting his arms. That's the signal. Caesar yells, "Why, this is violence!"
Casca strikes the first blow from behind, a glancing wound to his neck. But Caesar is a soldier. He reacts instantly. He grabs Casca's arm and stabs him with his stylus, the sharp pen he used for writing. He's fighting back. He's wrestling with them. He's a strong man.
Until he sees Brutus.
When he saw Marcus Brutus step forward with a drawn dagger, all the fight just left him. He pulled his toga up over his head to hide his face so that he would die with dignity. The sources vary on his last words. Shakespeare gives us the famous "et tu, Brute." Suetonius suggests he might have said in Greek, "kai su tenon," which means, "you too, my child," or he may have simply died in silence.
23 stab wounds. He falls at the base of the statue of his great rival, Pompey.
The irony is just, it's perfect. He died at the feet of his enemy, bathed in his own blood.
The conspirators run out into the forum, holding up their bloody daggers, shouting, "Liberty! Freedom! The tyrant is dead!" They expected the people of Rome to hail them as heroes. They expected a parade.
And instead, they got silence. The people were confused and they were terrified. They ran and locked themselves in their houses. The conspirators had miscalculated completely. Caesar was the champion of the common people. They didn't see him as a tyrant. They saw him as their benefactor.
The power vacuum was instant, and Mark Antony seized the moment. He gets hold of Caesar's will, reads it to the public. Caesar left his gardens to the people and money to every citizen, and then Antony gives a funeral oration that whips the crowd into a violent frenzy. The mob takes firebrands from the funeral pyre, burns down the Senate house, and hunts the conspirators out of the city.
And from the ashes of all this chaos, Caesar's grandnephew and adopted heir, a sickly, unknown teenager named Octavian, the future Augustus, rises up. He teams up with Antony, they hunt down and defeat Brutus and Cassius, and then eventually Octavian defeats Antony. By 27 BC, the Republic was officially dead. The Roman Empire had begun.
So the assassins achieved the exact polar opposite of what they wanted. They killed one man to save the Republic, but their actions directly led to its permanent destruction and the crowning of an emperor.
Precisely. Caesar was the earthquake that leveled the old crumbling city. Augustus was the brilliant, patient architect who built the new one on top of the ruins.
So what is the final verdict on Caesar? Was he a monster or a hero? A destroyer or a savior?
He is the ultimate Rorschach test of history. He's both. If you value order, efficiency, and brilliant, decisive governance, he's a hero who saved Rome from its own corrupt gridlock. If you value political liberty, checks and balances, and the rule of law, then he's a power-hungry tyrant who destroyed a free state for his own ego.
It's the Brutus dilemma, really. Is it ever right to use unconstitutional means to break the rules, to fix a system that is fundamentally broken?
That is the question that echoes down through history. And Caesar's life is the ultimate case study. He proved that when political institutions fail to address the real needs of the people, a strong man will eventually step in to fill the void. He didn't kill the Republic. The Republic committed suicide by refusing to adapt. Caesar just signed the death certificate.
That is a heavy thought to end on. But if you want to really understand the genius of Caesar, specifically the military engineering we talked about earlier, you have to see it. It's one thing to talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. We describe the walls of Alesia, but seeing a 3D reconstruction of that double fortification, seeing the sheer scale of it, it really puts into perspective how impossible that victory should have been.
Our friends at the History Titans channel on YouTube have put together some of the best visual breakdowns of the Gallic Wars I've ever seen. The maps, the unit movements, the animations of the bridge construction. It's incredible stuff.
It connects the geography to the tactics in a way that audio just can't,
Yeah.
It brings it all to life.
So if you found this fascinating, go subscribe to History Titans on YouTube right now. It is the perfect visual companion to what you just heard. Thanks for listening. And remember, beware the Ides of March. We'll see you next time.